What's up, Night Owl? Steely here, back with another video, and today I'm going to be going over the very first chapter of Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden. This video is mainly for DMs to kind of get a feel for chapter 1, get some DM tips, but players can take something away from this as well. Now, to start off, the very first thing that you need to do as a DM when you're deciding to run Rime of the Frostmaiden is you need to choose which of the 10 towns that the players are going to start at. Now, 10 towns is literally made up of 10 different towns, and the town that you decide to start your party in is actually going to have a pretty big impact on the earlier levels of the campaign. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Rime of the Frostmaiden actually puts a lot on your plate as a DM, and you're going to have to do a lot of prep work because Icewind Dale, in Chapter 1 specifically, is very open-ended, very open world, and it leaves a lot of options for you to explore. Each of these 10 towns has a quest, and there's also 2 quests on their own. There's 12 quests in Chapter 1, and you're only going to need to choose about 5 of them. And I'm going to do a separate video going over each town and pros and cons and go over the quest for them. Some of them are a lot harder than others, and some of them are just kind of are quicker. Some of them you can actually fill out a whole session. Some of them kind of went faster, but I'll be making video guides for each town to kind of fluff them up for you so you have something to go off of when you choose your starting town. Now, I want to bring attention to the very first sentence of Chapter 1 of Rime of the Frostmaiden, and that's that most of the people that come to 10 towns are either fugitives or outcasts or pariahs, and they're just looking for a place to be tolerated or accepted. And this is a golden opportunity for you as a DM and as a player, if you're watching this, to come up with a character idea that doesn't normally fit in another setting. Like if you like playing drow or goblins or kobolds or one of those monstrous races or things that just don't fit. I personally love minotaurs. Any of those races that or character concepts rather that don't fit in other settings might be perfect here in Icewind Dale, because this is just the place to be when you don't fit in anywhere else. So DMs, please keep that in mind when your players are pitching you their character concepts and ideas. Icewind Dale is really the place to let them to free up some of your character creation rules and to kind of let them give them some leeway. Be really lax with the character creation. This is definitely the place to do that, especially since the Frostmaiden has kind of locked the town in this never ending winter. And the town is almost perpetually in darkness, so sunlight sensitivity is something that can just be overlooked. This is the best setting for that, for those people that want to play drow or kobold. Kobold have sunlight sensitivity, things like that. Those races that are really that you're always like, oh, do I allow this? You know, is it a good character concept? This is the campaign for that. Now, once you've chosen your starting town, you're going to have a few quests to choose from. Each town has its own quest, and there are also 2 quests that are independent of the town that you chose. And in this video, I'm going to go over those 2 quests, and in the individual town videos, I'm going to cover those quests. Before I talk about those 2 quests, though, I want to talk about character advancement. Whenever your party completes one quest, they advance to level 2. This means that hopefully within the first session, depending on your pacing, that your party should be level 2 by the end of the first session, or at least the second. So once you complete the first quest, your party will be level 2. At which point, the third quest will level them to 3, and then the 5th quest will level them to 4. And at that point, at level 4, they move on to Chapter 2. So to be clear, you have 12 quests to choose from in Chapter 1, but they're only going to do 5 of them before they hit level 4, at which point they move on to the next chapter. That's important to note because you're going to be making cuts. So make sure you read through each town or watch each town video and decide which ones that you like or don't like, or which ones you would prefer, which towns you like and don't like, and then you can kind of streamline that. Now, I personally, I've run multiple groups through multiple different towns, and they've moved to the various towns, and I've definitely figured out the quests that I like, the towns that I like, and such, which is why I want to do those videos to kind of help you out, because some of them are harder than others. I made some rewards changes that you may or may not agree with, but you'll see in the individual town videos. But what's important to note is you're only going to need to choose 5 quests to run your party through, which will take them to level 4, and then you move on to the next chapter. Now, this isn't hard set in stone. You can run all 12 quests if you want. It depends on your group. If your group doesn't mind being a certain level for a little bit longer, that's fine. They don't have to get a level every session. They don't have to get a level every other session. It's really up to you. If you have more than 5 quests that you really like, run them through it. There's a few of my groups that are bouncing around the idea of sticking around the levels a little bit longer to kind of play, do more quests in 10 towns. Now, by the book, it says once your party hits level 3, they start to develop a reputation around 10 towns. They start to get recognized in the area. So that's 3 quests. Once they complete 3 quests, they'll be level 3, and that's when they start building a reputation. What I would recommend for you is have every key NPC, every quest giving NPC, every speaker, basically everyone with a name tag, recognizes the party and is either appreciative or not, depending on what their actions are, but at least shows recognition to the party. At level 3, that's when that happens. And the book says at level 4, they begin to get a hero's welcome at the towns that they've helped. So whatever quest they've done in whichever towns are open arms when the party arrives. They're pretty well known around that town. These towns are pretty small. Some of them have a population of like 50 and 100. Especially those, they're going to be pretty well known in those towns. So make sure you give them their reputation. Let them know that their actions do have an impact. Now onto the quest. With the exception of each town's starting quest, there are also 2 starting quests which are available independent of the town you choose. It says that you can do these quests regardless of where you choose. The first one is called Coldhearted Killer, and the second one is called Nature Spirits. Now, Coldhearted Killer has a bounty hunter in the tavern take notice of the adventuring party and recruit them to investigate a series of murders that have been happening in 10 towns. Now, I personally ran this. I've tried this quest as the starting quest, and what I found is I really like doing this Coldhearted Killer quest as the second quest that your party does. And the reason for that is the bounty hunter takes note of the party. And sometimes that doesn't really fit with the story. Like if your party is just showing up to 10 towns and then this bounty hunter kind of sees them, it's like, hey, do you guys want a quest? Whereas if you do Coldhearted Killers second, the bounty hunter can have heard of the party from the first quest that they did once word gets around town, and then the bounty hunter can recruit them to follow up on this investigation. That's really up to you. I personally found that I liked doing Coldhearted Killers as the second quest. After you do the first quest, they have, word gets around town of the party, and then the bounty hunter sees them in the tavern after celebrating. Maybe they're chilling. No pun intended. They're in the tavern, and the bounty hunter sees them and says, "Hey, I heard you guys are capable. How about you guys track down this killer for me?" Now, another thing I want to point out about Coldhearted Killers, I'm not going to go through the entire quest in this video, but the quest does mention that the killer that the bounty hunter is after, or the bounty hunter suspects, is working as a bodyguard for a traveling merchant company. And the merchant company is a bit shady, a bit on the shady side. They do a lot of racketeering and things like that. So every party that I've run through Coldhearted Killer without problem, like I try not to really hammer home the whole racketeering bit, but I do mention that it's a shady organization. Every single party, without fail, every one of them wanted to take out not only the killer but the shady organization. So I be ready for that as a DM. This quest is going to be tough for a first level party if you don't control how they approach it. If your party goes to take on the killer as well as the merchant company, it's going to be tough. A first level party is going to get ate up because we're talking, I believe, a bandit captain and a couple bandits, and then the killer himself, which is a CR3, I believe. I don't have his character sheet pulled up, but it's going to be tough. So maybe keep that in mind as a DM when you present this quest, that the party is going to want to take on all of them. They're going to want to take them all out. And if you can, try to work around that so that they just go after the main killer. And there are consequences to taking out the entire company, which consists, I think it's 4 bandits and then the leader. and then the killer that you're after, the leader's bodyguard. So you keep that in mind when you run your party. They're going to want to kill them all. They're going to kill everyone, and um, they're just going to see evil throughout this whole organization. They're going to want to take them out. So be ready for that. Try to present that how you can, to where they'll just go after the one. It's going to be tricky, but just keep that in mind. Now, the second quest you have to choose from is called Nature Spirits. And this quest has your party exploring 10 towns, trying to track down these nature spirits in order to try to bring back summer to 10 towns. And it introduces this new creature called Twingas. And they're essentially just little nature spirits. This isn't a combat quest by any means. This is just an exploration role play type quest. So if your group is pretty heavy in the role play and not really, they can get away with this a game session without combat. This is a solid quest for you. Nature spirits, just exploring, playing around. Like once they find the nature spirits, they can play house with them, play games with them. They're just like little friendly spirits that are running around 10 towns, and they'll pop up every once in a while. And if your party role plays with them and plays along with them, the nature spirits will actually bless them, give them a blessing, a new type of mechanic, kind of like a boon, but much weaker. It essentially gives them 3 spells that they can, like a spell that they can burn 3 times. And yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So that one is that one's really to get your party out exploring 10 towns. It's just kind of role play heavy quest. Now I want to talk about a few more things that are covered in the chapter. First being winter survival gear. Now the first is cold weather clothing. And if you follow the book character creation rules, you're given a free set of cold weather clothing, which allows you to automatically succeed on checks against extreme cold, as long as the cold weather clothing remains dry. This is important because every town, with the exception of Bryn Shander, is on a lake. So chances are it'll come up that your party falls in water or something like that, and their clothing is no longer dry. So make sure you check the extreme weather or extreme cold rules for that. But as long as they're wearing this clothing, don't need to worry about it. The next winter survival gear that I want to talk about is crampons. And crampons is essentially a metal plate at the bottom of your boot or your shoe with spikes coming out of it. And they're basically cleats, which keep you from slipping around on ice. They're just spikes at the bottom of your shoe, and they keep you from slipping around. And they don't come up very often in the book, but there are plenty of opportunities, which I will cover in those videos, those quest specific videos, where you can have them come into play. But they're only 2 gold. Most of the parties I've run have bought them along with the cold weather clothing, and the snowshoes was the next thing I want to talk about. And they're just a nice little thing that you can add to it for flavor whenever a sheet of ice comes up, which is pretty often. The last one is snowshoes, and snowshoes are one of those things that once you have them, you don't really notice them unless you don't have them. And there are times where you'll be fighting an enemy that has snowshoes. And what I would do as a DM, they don't really cover this in the rules, but what I would do as a DM is make it difficult terrain, make snow difficult terrain unless you're wearing snowshoes. Now, there may be sections of the book that I just missed, but I really don't see snowshoes coming up very often. So as a DM, I would kind of just, whenever you're in snow, which if you're not in ice, you're in snow, one of the two. It's very rare that you're not in one of those. Maybe stone if you're in a cave, but snowshoes make it difficult terrain if they're not wearing snowshoes, and that'll kind of encourage them to drop 2 whole gold for their snowshoes. Or when they drop an enemy that has snowshoes, they just toss them in their inventory, put them on just for effect. You don't really have to. You don't need it. You can just say the snow is lighter than it is. Again, these rules are really free form, but snowshoes, I personally just difficult terrain. If you're not wearing them, it's fine. Moving on. So next I want to talk about transportation in 10 towns. Now the 10 towns are relatively close together. So the primary mode of transportation is just walking, being on foot. It only takes a few hours, but you do have the option of dog sleds or axe beaks to cut down travel time in half. Both of them cut 50% off the travel time. 2 hours becomes 1 hour, 4 hour becomes 2 hours. And what I would do personally, the axe beaks are about 50 gold. What I did for my games is I rewarded axe beaks at the level 3 quest. Whatever quest they did at level 3, I rewarded them a couple of axe beaks. And that just cuts the travel time in half. Depending on how you run, it's really up to you as DM if you want to do that. They don't really participate in combat because they're CR 1/8, and by the time a level third party gets them, they won't really be super useful. And if you end up giving them an axe beak and they abuse it, I guess somehow in combat, they are killable. They have very low hit points. So I gave my parties axe beak just to cut down travel time, just to have a reason to say, oh, you can get from here to here, no issue. And it's a nice little flavor effect. You can roll with, you can really expand on that by giving it a name, giving it a personality. It could be another NPC, but it's really up to you whether, if you want to give them an axe beak or not. It's not. I don't think it's that bad. Next, I'm going to talk about the Snowflake rating of each town. Now, each town has its own rating for services, comfort, and friendliness. And it's a 3-star rating, or snowflakes is actually what they call it. Snowflake rating. 3 being awesome, 1 being terrible, and then 2 being right there in the middle. So for example, a 3 snowflake friendliness town is incredibly friendly. Everybody is really happy. One snowflake, everybody's miserable and angry and mean to the party. And same thing for services. Services is things like what you can hire, what service, like cleric for healing, or a mage, things like that. And then comfort is whether they're sleeping in an inn or in a cold shed. So every town has a 3 snowflake 3-star rating, and I'll be going over those in the individual towns. For this video, I'm just going to mention them. 3-star rating: services, comfort, friendliness. That's all you need to know. Now for the big one: sacrifices to the Frostmaiden, sacrifices to Ariel. This is a really tough one to present to the party. Each town makes sacrifices to the Frostmaiden on nights of a new moon. So that means once a month, each town makes a sacrifice to the Frostmaiden. And these sacrifices are warmth, humanoid, or food. Each town has a separate one, and that's identified in each town section what they sacrifice. Warmth is by far the simplest. The night that they make their sacrifice, they cut out all the fire. They extinguish all the fire, and the entire town sleeps in the cold. They're just freezing that night, and that's sort of their way to as their way of requesting that the Frostmaiden bring back summer. They endure a cold night, a super cold night. That's an easy one. The next one is food. Some towns will actually gather excess food like knuckle trout and take them out into the wilderness and leave it there for the animals, the polar bears, crag cats, etc. Yetis, things in the wilderness to come and take, and that's their sacrifice to the Frostmaiden to bring back summer. Those two are whatever. The next one's humanoid. There are some towns in 10 towns which will actually do a human sacrifice to the Frostmaiden in order to bring back summer. And no one's happy with that. And so be ready for that. When you present that to your party, make sure that they, what are you going to do? No party's going to like that. Especially if you're running, good guys, good heroes. The first thing they're going to do is like once a month, somebody gets sacrificed. It's ridiculous. But that's the way it is. Your party's going to have a hard time handling that. Some parties might even make that like their priority to deal with, but just depends on how you present it. So keep that in mind as a DM. Some towns do human sacrifice, and your party is gonna know it. Now, the way these towns choose their sacrifice is through a raffle, and the way they sacrifice them is actually pretty bad. They strip them naked and they take them out into town and tie them to a pole, and they just freeze to death. Or they'll just exile them to be, they'll strip them naked and exile them. So that's how they do the sacrifices. And the way they choose is through a raffle. And one of the plots for Coldhearted Killers, the very first quest where you track down the killer, is that killer is tracking down people who have tried to evade the raffle, who try to get out of the raffle in order to be sacrificed. So it's a real political thing. That's another thing you need to keep in mind as a DM is there are people in a political position that will try to get out of the raffle so they don't get sacrificed. And that is the plot. That is who the killer in Coldhearted Killer is after, those people that are raffle dodging. So keep that in mind if you run that particular quest. And that's it. That's it for chapter 1. You have your 2 quests. You have a general rundown. Remember, you're going to need to choose a town, and you're going to have a quest for each town. And I'm going to do an individual video on those. Each of those towns and those individual quests deserve their own video for sure, because there's a lot of information. Again, this chapter is very, very DM intense. A lot of work on your part as a DM. So be on the lookout for those. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you know how YouTube works. Hit those buttons, leave a comment down below. Let me know which your favorite 10 towns is. And if you are a DM looking for players looking for a DM, make sure you join the Discord. Link in the description. Come by, ask questions. Let me know what you think. And as always, I'll see you at sundown.